Welcome back to Cards and Comics. Today I have part 3 of my Pittsburgh Pirates collection. Now I have been doing this in different sections or different parts because the collection is pretty massive and I didn't want it to be one 5-hour long video. So part 1 was my Stargell, Clemente, Maz, Keiner collection. Part 2 was my pre-war collection, and today is going to be my 1950s. Now, I didn't do a good job of separating my Keiner cards out. I had a few Keiner cards in the 50s I didn't pull out into that video, the first video. So we're going to start today with a really cool card, and it is a 1950 Ralph Keiner Bowman. And this is one of my favorite cards because, in all honesty, the 50 Bowman cards are pretty undervalued. There's a Jackie Robinson in this set. There's a lot of great players. They're harder to get condition wise, in my opinion. You just don't see them as often. Here's the back of the Keiner. It's a 6, but it's a nice 6. It's got great color, and I've never gone back and bought a 7 or 8 just because I just never really thought about upgrading this card, just because I liked it. Not every card needs to be a 7 or 8, and I was happy with the 6, and it's a great card, and I'm glad I have at least one nice 1950 Bowman Hall of Famer in my collection, because I don't have a whole lot from this set, because this is a tough set to find. Next up is a common Dino Restelli, and can't tell what he did. Looks like he was hit 351 and hit 7 home runs, so in 12 games. So the guy had a great cup of tea with the Pirates, but he's a common from the 50 Bowman set. And again, you'll see a lot of commons in here, as I'm a lot of times just picking up cards of either players I like or just thinking about putting together team sets. And so I was just buying up every Hall of Famer, or in this case commons, of these 50s players I could get, because I just like having team sets or just having a lot of Pirate cards. So I was just kind of trying to be a massive Pirate super collector, and you get cards like this. So this is a 51 Burke Ross Ralph Keiner. Burke Ross cards are perforated, so you can see the edge here is perforated. So I forget how many they came in a panel, and so you have to be careful. And this is what the back looks like for anyone who's not seen a Burke Ross card. They do have kind of some stats on the back. And, Ralph Keiner was very good. You can see right there, he hit 47 home runs in 1950. And he's one of those Hall of Famers that, a lot of people don't really know a lot about, because he's not, again, we talk about tiers, top tier, but he led, I think, for like 6 or 7 years, he led the league in home runs. So he definitely had this run where he was really good, and kind of, I would say, petered out, but didn't have, that 15 to 20 years of excellence. But he had like that 10 years of being a very, very top tier player. So next up is the Vern Law. I believe this is his rookie card, 51 Bowman, and Vern Law won a Cy Young. So he was a very good player. He definitely, was a star, in the 50s and 60s. He was kind of one of the players that started the Pirates getting to be a good team again. So yeah, he was 6-4 that year in 27 games. So, first year. Now this card is very interesting because you can see it's got a little bit of wax stain right on the back. And I believe the way the 51 Bowman set was released, and a lot of these older sets, was only a couple cards in a pack, like 2 cards in a pack. And so, depending on the severity of the wax stain, you get either a straight grade or an ST grade. But so many cards have minor staining that PSA does allow for some minor staining without giving the ST designation. So when you're buying these cards raw, if you see one of these cards and it has a little bit of a stain on it, that may not cause it to get the qualifier, if you're worried about that. So that's my only 51 Bowman. You can see, I was not, paying attention a lot to trying to build these 50s team sets. I was just trying to get them when they were, good value. And here's a card I've got twice. So here's a 52 Bowman Vernon Law. So second year Vern Law. And here's the back. What's really interesting, and this is one of those things that I think is a good learning lesson in vintage cards, is the next card I have I'm going to show you. Same card, and it's a PSA 8. So 52 Bowman Vertilon Ps8. Now, the one thing I want to show you is the two cards side by side. And the first thing you should look at is the fact that the 52 Bowman 7 has yellowed borders, right? And when you're looking at eye appeal in these 50s cards, guys, you really have to pay attention to the toning and the appeal, the natural eye appeal of the card. Technically grading, the card on the left technically has some things that are better on it. It has a little bit better edges, but it's a little off center. It has a toning, whereas the card on the right is a little angle cut, but it's not bad. But great color and pretty well centered. So you can see why the 8, is an 8, and it is a better card. So, in some cases, we always argue these grades, but, I do find with PSA a lot of times the grading does make sense. Like that card definitely, the 7 was, not as good as an 8. Next up is Bill Howerton. Again, Pirates common. This guy was, let's see, he hit 262 in 80 games. Okay. Now, again, you can see that slight wax stain on the back. So that's very important as you're looking at these cards, again, to look at the severity of that wax stain. And is there any mathematical or scientific calculation you can make to see how much of the back has to be covered with wax before you get the ST qualifier? The answer is no. It falls under that enigmatic PSA eye appeal standard, so which means they can do whatever the hell they want. So no matter how much you want it to be a standard that's easy to follow, it just never happens that way. All right, next up is a player that obviously, as a Pirate fan, you've definitely heard of. It's Bob Friend. Bob Friend was a great pitcher for the Pirates. When the Pirates won the World Series in 1960, they had 4 great pitchers. They had Bob Friend, Vern Law, and then they had Wilmer Mizell. And all those guys won, I believe, more than 12 games out of as a starter. And they also had Harvey Haddock. So they had 4 really good starters. So you take, 4 really good starters, and they had a really good bullpen guy, and that was Elroy Face. So they had a good pitching staff. And for people who don't know why the Pirates won the World Series, go back and look at the games. The games were won, basically, the 4 games the Pirates won against the Yankees were pitching duels. And the 3 games they lost in big blowouts when their pitching didn't hold up. So basically, it was good pitching versus great hitting, and the Pirates won with timely hitting and good enough pitching to win. And the guy like Bob Friend was a big piece of it. So, but you can see he was 6-10 that year, and not great stats. 150 innings. He walked 68, struck out 41. So this time he was not a strikeout pitcher, and you can again see a little wax on that card. So, the one thing you have to get very comfortable with when you buy 50s cards is you're not going to get like pristine Bowman Chrome looking cards. They're going to have a little wax. They're going to have a little bit of issues with them because, PSA has taken into consideration some of these set characteristics. Now, next up is a set that everyone knows. It's a set that I've not paid as much attention to just because of the cost. As a collector, I felt like it was just a set that, to get high grade was tough, but nowadays, even 7s are tough. So I guess you consider this maybe high grade now. So I do have some commons in the set. I used to have the Dick Groat rookie card, and I sold it, back when the prices really jumped, and I did, definitely made a little bit of money on that card. So I don't regret it too much because, again, I'm not putting the sets together. If I broke up my team set to sell my Dick Groat, I would be a little more upset. But I don't really have a full team set, 52 top, so I figure I can get it back later when the prices go back down. That's sort of what I'm hoping for some things. Some things won't go back down. But this is Dale Coogan. This is a really nice card. Very well centered, great color. And this is what you look for. It's a red back, card number 87. Nothing on the back that's an issue. So this is, one of those things where this is a very fairly graded card. It's got a little wear on the corners. but it's definitely a great card. And 52 tops are just beautiful when you can find them centered like that. Next up is Ted Wilkes. Okay. And again, other in the spectrum, this is the green background. So again, these monochrome color backgrounds with these kind of painted portrait, cards make these cards really, really pop out. This card's a little more off center than the Dale Coogan was. Again, it's a red back. Again, this guy was 3-5 with a 2.85 ERA. So it looks like he was a relief pitcher. He struck out 48 and, walked 29. So, and he pitched 100 innings. So again, this is back in the day. They didn't strike a lot of people out. Like today, you can't be a pitcher today if you're not striking out like two per inning. And again, Dale Coogan hit 11 home runs with 57 RBIs and hit 262. So, again, that's pretty average for a player back in those days. So, that's the thing with the Pirates back in the day around this time period before Clemente. They just had a lot of average players with a few stars mixed in, kind of like a losing team does. Until they got some superstars like Clemente and Maz, they really didn't compete. And but they had good pitching. They never had good hitting until some of those other pieces came in. So here's Forrest Main. Moving on to 53 tops, and this is like when you get into the weird grade. So here's 6.5. Probably like a pop 3 or 4 just because, they don't give out the 6.5 very often. Forrest Main, so let's read about him. He was a pitcher, so he was 2-12. So this guy was not great with a 4.47 ERA. Lifetime ERA of 5.04. So this guy was basically, a hanger-oner kind of guy. Cool first name, but definitely not a star. So again, Forrest Main. He looks really old in this photo, too. He looks almost like a manager. So 6.5. Next up, 54 tops. So again, I don't have tons of those 52 and 53 tops. So you'll see a lot more later 50s cards because, again, I got a lot of these cards back when I was collecting more on a budget, more budget than I have today. And so, 52 tops and 53 tops, even commons were tough to get back in those days. So later years were actually where I spent a lot of my money just because you get more bang for your buck. But 54 tops, definitely pretty set. So Vic Jankowitz or Janowitz, PSA 7. So you can see in the 50s cards, I do basically accept that 7th grade and 6th grade more often than I do, you'll see in the 60s. So this guy played in 42 games, hit 252, 2 home runs at our best. This guy's kind of a bit player for the Pirates. There you go. Nice red background. Pretty well centered. This card's a really nice 7. Next up is an actual star, but again, it's not high grade, but it's good enough. It's actually a very well centered card. It's a 54 tops Dick Groat. So Dick Groat was a shortstop. He won the MVP in 1960. So he was the MVP of the year the Pirates won the World Series, which created a lot of problems for the Pirates because Clemente really felt he should have won the MVP that year. And if you look at, Groat played shortstop and he was a pretty good defender. And he was definitely a leader on the team. And but Clemente definitely had a good year. So I think there was some Clemente had a little bit of a right to gripe. And this year, in 1954, Dick Groat was in the military. So it says right there on the back of the card, which is kind of cool. That it does say in military service. And that's, a very interesting, part of the set in this time period. Now, the thing about Dick Groat that's really interesting too, and if you're into vintage cards, you probably know this because it's almost all of his cards talk about it, but he was an All-American at Duke, and he could have played professional basketball. He actually did, I think, in 1 year, in 52. He actually played in the Pro Basketball League and played, I don't know if it was NBA at the time, but he was a two-way player in pro. So this guy was a great athlete. And again, he was an All-American at Duke as a basketball player. So pretty cool player. And, pretty cool story about Dick Groat. And he won an MVP as a baseball player too. So he was a many-time All-Star. He went on to play for the Cardinals as well later on. once he left the Pirates. So this is kind of a gimmicky card. So Topps did this kind of thing. So these are, I think these guys are, I don't know if they're twins. Right in the back here. Yeah, they're identical twins. So Eddie and John O'Brien. I think one was a catcher. No, yeah, shortstop and second base. So obviously this was kind of like a little bit of a gimmick because neither one of these guys were great players. Yeah, obviously in 54 you had Dick Groat, who was also a shortstop. And then in 56 and 57 you had Bill Mazurowski, who basically played 15 straight years as a all-star caliber second baseman. So these guys never really were good, but it was just cool to have twins, I guess, playing in the majors. And I don't know how they got both their stats in the back. I don't know, what's it about, but it just shows like, kind of a cool, pretty cool, like, card in that way, showing two brothers. And these guys were All-American basketball players at Seattle University. So, pretty cool, stats there. Just a cool card. This card actually gets a little bit more value if you look at the cards in terms of commons, which bring a little more money. And that's it because that card's kind of a unique card, kind of a I'll say gimmicky card, but people will pay a little bit more money for it because they think that's a cool card. Here's Gare Alley, another shortstop. So the Pirates had 3 shortstops on the team. I don't know why. In 54, I think the O'Briens were definitely not a big time player. This guy had 1 home run and 12 RBIs. So again, not a strong contributor to the Pirates at all. Dick Groat was a, all-star, so I don't think they needed Gar Alley. This card's a little off center for a 7. Not a great looking card, honestly. Next up is John Fitzpatrick. This one's very well centered. He's a coach. In these 50s, like 52 Topps, a lot of the Pirate cards are coaches, and I'm glad they quit doing this after about 54. You don't see a lot more coaches, in the sets. Having like the third base coach, or having like different non starters or non players, other than just the manager, it was kind of annoying. In some cases they put coaches in because they were like former players, but still, no one really wanted a coach card. And again, this guy was, just a coach. I don't know, like it doesn't even say really what he's a coach of. He's just a coach, and obviously played, sometime, professional ball, but no one really cares. But it's a nice looking card. Next up is a Vern Law. So obviously we talked about Vern Law being a very important piece of the 1960 Pirates team that won the World Series. It's a little off top to bottom. That's the one thing that's interesting about these 54 Topps is the illusion on top to bottom centering. You have to really look left to right to gauge what this bottom centering should be. It should match the depth of the left to right. So if left to right is perfectly centered, that amount of border should be on the bottom. If it's not, then the card's off center, either top to bottom or either up or down. You can see like the card like this right next to it. You can see that big difference in that bottom border between the Vern Law and the Fitzpatrick. The Law definitely is a little off center top to bottom. So Vern Law that year was in military service. Again, so many players were gone. And I guess that's why the Pirates had multiple shortstops in that 54 set, because Dick Groat was, in the service. So they had to have a lot of backups because they had so many players, in the military. It's interesting that Topps made cards of them because they weren't very consistent on who they chose to make cards of when they were gone for whatever reason. One thing that's very interesting too is how long I've had these cards. I just noticed that PSA has so many different backs. So for a short time they had, just a straight foil. Then they had this like sparkly foil back. I know there's sites you can go to see all the iterations of the holders and the flips, and this is where the back of the flip was different, where they put like these sparkly foil versus regular foil PSA on the back. So starting now in 55. So 55, I got quite a few players, quite a few cards. So we'll start here with Dick Cole, and this is an 8. So You start seeing some more 8s coming in. So this is Dick Cole. I believe, again, he may have been a coach. No, he's infield. And let's see, he hit 270 and had 40 RBIs and 1 home run. So this guy was a light hitting infielder, which is pretty common back in those days. He played third base, he played second base. So he was kind of a utility player for the Pirates. Dick Cole, again, not a star, but just, a utility player, played a lot of positions for the Pirates. Next up is, again, Bob Friend. We talked about Bob Friend. Bob Friend was a big-time player for the Pirates. He led the league in a lot of categories. Let's see how he progressed. Remember, he wasn't very good the year that I think the last year we saw him in like 52. In 55, which is the 54 season, he was 7-12 with a 5.08 ERA, 73 strikeouts, and let's see if it says how many innings he pitched. 170 innings. So, wow. So, again, Bob Friend was not doing great. The 55 Bowman sets are pretty cool because it has advice. So, they actually, I don't know if this is all like by the player or if they just like auto-penned, basically attributed quotes to the player. But it sounds like this is, something that the player did say. So, it's kind of cool that, on a lot of cards, they have this my advice to youngsters or, to actually interview the players or have them kind of talk about it. So this is a 7. It's a nice 7. The one thing about the 55 Bowman set I think is really interesting is the color of the wood grain border is different on a lot of cards. And I think that's like a set thing that they kind of did just naturally. I don't think they were, trying to make every card, making the different color panels, but definitely a very cool attribute to the set. So here's the same card again as a PSA 8. And so again, this is an older flip than the other 55 Bowman. So this is, you can see that, one card, the 7 is below, not on one line. And then the backs will probably be different. Yeah, you'll see this has got that embossed. Now instead of the foily back, this has got the hologram, and this has got the kind of embossed you can feel on the back. So again, different flips, different eras. This is older, this is newer. So they went from the hologram to just this kind of generic. So this is actually a newer holder. This is an older holder. Now, the one thing I say about this card, and this isn't an 8, but I'll get into some issues I don't like about some of these cards. So first of all, there's a piece of cardboard inside the holder right there. You see it? It's annoying. It moves around. But the other thing too is that big print line. And so this happens a lot in this set is print lines. So I would say that the print line makes this card a little bit uglier than it would be normally. So, it's common. Friend was a good player. Was a Hall of Famer. So you would consider him a common still. For the Pirate collectors, obviously the key players on that 60 team are kind of special. So a lot of Pirate fans would consider Bob Friend, like a semi-star or whatever. But this card is kind of ugly for an 8, honestly. So this is where you kind of buy, the card, not buy the holder, not the card. I probably just bought off eBay, and then when I got it, I was like, kind of ugly, and just put in the collection. Now here's a card that was graded after the 0.5 a hit. So again, it's going to have that sparkly backflip. It's a 7.5, which again is one of those unicorn grades. It's Frank Thomas, not the cool Frank Thomas, but the other Frank Thomas. And I believe Frank Thomas was not that bad of a player, but we shall see. He hit 33, was it 23 home runs? I can't. There we go. 23 home runs, had like 94 RBIs. Is that what it says? And hit like almost 300. So, this guy was a good player. That's another thing too, is like, this guy was pretty good. If you look at his career, he had a lot of good seasons like this. Had 172 hits, so he was a good player. And then this has my biggest thrill in baseball. So again, they must have gave these guys cards or something, and they just wrote into them. think it's really interesting that they took so much time to interview these players and talk to them. And my biggest thrill happened in 1953 when I was up at bat with bases loaded against the Giants. It's just a really cool, like he's like that had to be something that he said, because they wouldn't just pick some random moment from his career. That must have been something he gave him. So that's really cool. Next up is actually 2 cards. I never did anything with them once I bought them, because they still have like, kind of like stuff on them from the original owner. But this is, Roger Bowman. And again, a different series, and you can see like way different color borders now. So, Bowman, from an innovative standpoint, this set is so much more innovative than Topps, because they're different color borders. They're, giving like this kind of like personalized information on the back. Either you'll love or hate this design, but I really like the 55 Bowman set. And again, they put a lot of effort in this product. And again, this is going to be the last Bowman set ever made. So they were trying hard at the end, and I feel like they were trying everything to make this a go. And, Topps just was kind of just very tough to compete against a company like Topps. But again, Roger Bowman, very ironic name. Roger Bowman was must not have had any stats that year, because he did not. He basically saying he was coming back to the major, so he did not have a season that year. So he was basically a player that hadn't played in 54. So no stats. So he was a player that was coming back up. Here's Tom Brewer, and this is not a Pirate card, so I don't know how I got stuck in here. I must have bought it with I probably just threw it in there because I bought a lot of cards probably, and I got both these cards at the same time. I just stuck them in the box, so that's kind of funny. Tom Brewer was definitely a interesting player. He won 10 games that year, so there you go. Next up is PSA 6, so not a high grade. For what I think for this set, I think you can definitely find this card in a 7 or 8 pretty easily. It's a Vern Law, so again, we talked about Vern Law and how did Vern Law do. And again, I actually like this pose. I really like with the TV and this pose, kind of like this angled, almost like laying down and shot up. And again, he was 8-13 with a 5.5 ERA. So obviously these guys hadn't hit their stride yet. The Pirates were struggling in the 50s. That's how they got Clemente and some of these other players. They had, they weren't very good. And so they had to really look for talent. And how they got Clemente, it was a story where, the Dodgers were trying to hide him on their Montreal team, and the Pirates saw him, and the rest is history. But yeah, if the Dodgers would have brought Clemente directly to the majors instead of trying to hide him on a minor league team, the history would be a lot different about, the Pirates, and definitely what Clemente did, because he'd have been in a much bigger market for sure. Dick Littlefield, and pitcher for the Pirates. This is a PSA 7. Again, the dark colored borders here. Dick Littlefield won 10 games and lost 11, was a 3.6 RA. So this guy was, I would say, like average, whereas Vern Law had pretty much a below average career or year that year. Dick Littlefield was definitely a player that was kind of, just a, average starter, won more than he lost, but definitely was kind of back of the rotation guy for the Pirates in 1954, which this year is covered. But again, this is actually a very nice 7, very well centered, little chipping, but pretty cool card. So that's the 55 Bowman. So we'll move on to Topps. Now, I did try to put the 55 Topps set together because for the Pirate team set, because I had the Clemente, and I thought, well, I got the Clemente, and that's the toughest card. So let's try to get the whole set. So you'll see some more 55 Topps. So, and I think 55 Topps is one of the prettiest sets ever made. It's so stark in contrast. So, a lot of people, including me, I mean, I love the 55 Topps set, right? But a lot of people hate the 55 Bowman set. To me, they're just two different flavors. It's like, they're so different that there's like not even a comparison. To me, I can love them both that way. If they try to make, like, if Bowman was kind of just making a generic looking baseball card set, then I would be like, yeah, the Topps set's just so much better, color, 2 photos, just really cool, design. But, Bowman did something so, I call crazy and unique with the TV design that, that there's room to love them both. And I do like them both. So here's Jake Thies. It's a 6.5. Again, I kind of just like half grades. You can see I got a lot of half grades in here. I probably have like more half grades than I obviously should by the law of averages. So I was obviously looking for the half grades because good value. This card is really nice. I mean, you look at it. I don't see anything really that you wouldn't say this card's a 7. They may have like technically maybe a 2 inch of a corner damage for them to give it a 7, but nice card. Here's the back in a super white back. And he was 3-9 with a 3.88 ERA, 130 innings. So he was definitely not a starter. So he was kind of a middle, probably a, like a relief pitcher that maybe started a few games or was a long relief. But he was just one of those kind of like middle of the road, like kind of long reliever kind of guys, Jake Thies. So next up, the card that I always thought was really cool, just because I like the color. So it's Kurt Roberts. This one's definitely off center, and again, the 0.5 grade. So maybe this is going to be just a theme of the video that I got tons of weird 0.5 grade cards on my collection. So here's Kurt Roberts. So he was second base, and again, we know that in a couple years later that Mazurowski came in, so they really had no solution at second base. Card's a little off center, and Kurt Roberts that year played in 134 games and hit 232 with 1 home run and 36 RBI. So you can see that there was not a lot of competition for Maz when he came in. The one thing about this card that's a little interesting is that it's got a pretty significant print line there that goes across the card. So again, technically, this card's off center with a print line on the back. So 7.5 is probably the highest that card could ever probably achieve if it was ever regraded again, because it looks like it's right on that edge of being a little overgraded. Next up is Nelson King. So card number 112, very nice grade. And again, very similar to the Kurt Roberts in that blue background, which looks very nice, with the Pirates. Red. Good color, differentiation there. This card's very nice, a little angle cut. So you can see it's a little lower here and a little bigger there. So it's a little diamond. It's a little tilted, which hurts it a little bit. Nelson King was pretty good. Yeah, he was, so I want to make sure this wasn't, this is the minor. So this guy was a rookie, or he was just getting called up. He was 16-5 with a 2.25 ERA in the minors. And he had only 68 strikeouts in 184 innings. So, again, not a strikeout pitcher. And again, all these guys were contact pitchers back in the day and didn't throw as hard as they do today. Because today, you're going to have to throw it by someone, if you want to stick in the majors. So you have to throw hard and make a lot of strikeouts today. Dick Hall. So here's a yellow background. So, again, the different color backgrounds definitely make this set kind of colorful and pretty when you put it all together. Played third base. It was a PSA 7. A little off center, left to right. Dick Hall. Nice white back. He was in the majors, hit 239, 2 home runs, 27 RBI. So this guy was definitely a backup. He had 300 at bats. And that's the thing back in the day was, they were platooning guys back in this time, It's very common to see platoons in the 50s still. So again, today, platoons aren't really done anymore, but it was very common to have 2 players. One guy would hit left and one guy would hit right, or, one guy was a defensive guy, one guy was a batting guy. So platoons definitely existed. Today, players do not like platooning. So it's definitely something that doesn't happen as much today. But if you look at the 50s, 60s cards, you'll see tons of players who played like 100 games with 300 at bats, because they were just a platoon player, laid in any replacement guy, that kind of value to the team. So here's Dale Long, blue background, card 127. It's a 7, a little off center both ways. Again, that's the problem with this set. This set, as beautiful as it is, when it's off center, it's very noticeable. This is one of those sets that's just super noticeable if you get something that's off center, just to the fact of how when it's a horizontal design, off center cards just look so much worse, because you've got that real long border that is basically 100% of the eye appeal of the card. And when that's off, you just really notice it. So Dale Long, so let's see, he is a first baseman. Hit 23 home runs, 68 RBIs, 280. And so this is definitely a serviceable player. I think the thing that's funny about him was, when, they got good and I think I'm not sure if he was on the team in 61 or not. I have to go back and look. I don't remember every player on my 61 Pirate team set. I'm thinking that he was gone by then, but he may still have been on the team. But, he was definitely a player that was good enough to play, to be a player in the majors and wasn't just like a platoon guy. So he was definitely a player that, hit some home runs, had some value. And so he definitely would have been kind of a semi-star on the Pirates team that year. So moving on to 56, so a little more 55s. So moving on to 56, and then here is Roy Face. We talked about Roy Face's rookie cards in 53. Again, I used to have the 53 Roy Face. I think I traded it back in the day. Because again, even these semi-star Hall of Famer or semi-star rookie cards, sorry, not Hall of Famer, semi-star rookie cards, the value is just a little bit higher than you would think. And sometimes, player collectors or set collectors need it, and you can trade or get out of a card to buy another card. And sometimes I did that, and I definitely think I did that with my 53 Face. I definitely had one at one point. Here is a 6, pretty nice. Off a little bit left to right. White, nice, pretty white back. Look at that. That's a pretty striking white back, actually. So Face that year, in 42 games, pitched 126 innings. So this guy was a reliever, but so 40 games, 120 innings. So he's averaging 3 innings an appearance. So he was definitely coming in the 6th or 7th and just pitching the whole game or finishing up. He was 5-7 with a 3.57 ERA. So again, he struck out 84, which back in those days, he was a pretty good strikeout pitcher. But you can tell, he, was a pretty good reliever, but, he became, great at some point. And so for a few years, he was definitely, like you see him on some of the Fireman of the Year cards with like Hoyt Wilhelm. So he was considered the best reliever in baseball at some point. So, he definitely was a good player. Here's a 56 Dick Groat. This is a PSA 8. So this is a very nice card. I love the action shot of him sliding into home plate. Just, the 56 set is definitely really, really nice. I mean, obviously it's very similar to the 55 set, the two photos. The difference between the two sets, obviously is instead of just having a colored background, you get an actual action photo with the actual playing field in the background versus just like color. So they definitely up that ante and you get more action on the cards. To a lot of folks, this is kind of the best, for people who love like real, photography, action photography. This set is probably the first one to really give you action photography on a card set, and this great, detail. So a lot of people like this set because of that and think it's one of the best sets in the 60s or 50s because of it. I think so. It's definitely nice. I mean, I'm a little more of the color block kind of guy, so 55 is more my thing. But to me, it's like you can justify both. Like they both have their place, and it's cool to see that they're not the same exact set. Like they change it up, and this definitely is a good use of this action photography here. So Dick Groat had a good year. I mean, he's a shortstop. Remember, he had 267. 4 home runs, 51 RBI. So definitely coming back, obviously remember he was in the military for a little bit. So he came back, had a pretty good year, and then he was obviously building up to a MVP type year in 1960. Bob Friend. So Bob Friend, again, it's a 7, a little off center. And a lot of times with the pitchers, they just show them kind of in their pose versus actually throwing it off a mound. A little disappointing, but I understand why, because it looks weird. Like, look at the 71 Topps cards or 73s when you see him pitching off a mound. it kind of makes the card kind of a little different when you see him like in an actual game on the mound. So this is the gray back. So again, if you want to look at the difference in back color, so white back, gray back, there is very little chance you're going to make a mistake on what those two backs look like. So there you go. So this is when, Mr. Friend was starting to turn good. So remember in 55, 54, he kind of had a bad year. In 55, he went 14 games with a 2.84 ERA. So he definitely became much better. He threw 200 innings, and his strikeouts was about 98. So like one strikeout every, other inning. So he definitely wasn't, like by today's terms, a strikeout pitcher, but back then that would have been pretty respectable. So 2.84 ERA and 14 wins back when the Pirates were still just starting to get good. Again, Clemente came in 54, 55. So this is right around the time they started turning things around. PSA 7. So you can see Dick Rote came back, that Clemente, Bob Friend turned it around. So you can see why they were starting to kind of get good. 57. So here is a really nice Bob Friend card. So again, we'll go in Bob Friend. So again, this is basically his 6th year in the majors, and he was again turning it back up. Won 17 games this year. He lost 17 because the Pirates were still not as great as they were later on. 3.47 ERA, but his strikeouts went up again to 100, and I believe it says 106. Trying to look at it here. Or 166. I don't know. The card, so that's a massive increase in strikeouts. If, to go from like basically 100 strikeouts to 160. So you can see that, he's starting to get better and, ramping up his ability to strike out. And his innings pitched went from 200 to 314. So that would be a big explanation why he had a lot more strikeouts, because he threw over 114 more innings that year. So 166 strikeouts, that definitely would have been a strikeout pitcher back in the day. So this guy was definitely turning it on at the right time. Clemente was there. Maz just started again. This is Maz's rookie year as well. So the pieces are coming together for the Pirates to win a World Series in a couple years. But Bob Friend had started to turn it around. This was his 6th year in the majors. So Bob Friend was still a pretty young player. 57 Topps team card. I think the team cards in 57 are some of the best looking cards because they put a little frame around the card. So that's not in the base set. So they actually did something special. See, the base set doesn't have that little frame. So they knew they were kind of making a frame to make the cards look a little special. So I love that. They really didn't do that for any other year that I can remember, where they kind of made it look like a portrait you would hang on the wall. Just very nice. And so it's a 7, not super, super tough to get, but it's a nice looking card. And let's see on the back. It says, I thought maybe it'd tell what year, how they finished, but it just really has kind of like their team and who their all-time leaders are. Again, RBIs, Paul Wainer at 134. I'm trying to see batting average, because I think Honus Wagner basically had every one of his stats kind of toppled by either Wagner or Archie Vaughn. And Keiner actually holds the most runs. So Keiner most home runs. So again, Wagner had a lot of records until, Hall, until Wainer and those guys came in. So, but there you go. 7. It's a very nice card. I mean, it's a really well centered card. I think that definitely looks really clean. Here's the Roy Face in 57. So a 7.5. So the half grades are still there. Mr. Face won 12 games as a reliever. So that's pretty good. He got sent down to the minors quite a bit. So even though his rookie's in 53, when he first came up, he really didn't pitch much in 54, and then 55 and 56 he was up. So he had a 3.53 ERA, 12 wins, 13 losses, 90 strikeouts, 130 innings. So, he was still kind of a pretty good player, but he got better. And he definitely was a player that, was called upon to pitch a lot of innings still, because again, he pitched in 60 games with 130 innings. So he was going a little more than 2 innings per appearance, which is unheard of as a reliever today. Bob Skinner, 1957, SGC 7. Nice card, good gloss and color. And Bob Skinner was definitely a player that was around for the 61 or 60 World Series. So Skinner was on that team. He hit 202 this year. So, basically his second year in the majors. He got sent down in 55 and didn't play at all because he didn't, play that great in 54. So, this guy was, again, kind of a fringe major leaguer for a little while. But he hung around and he was, again, on that 60 Pirate team set. So, or 60 Pirate team that won the World Series. So we're moving on to 58 now. I have, again, one of the sets I was trying to build was the 58 Hires Root Beer set. So we see a lot of cards from that. So here is the Bob Friend. And I have the Maz. I showed it in the other video. I have the full Maz with the tab. So these cards come in two ways. See this little perforation at the bottom? So they would have a tab, a big tab, that was attached to the soda. And so that tab, a lot of times, is ripped off. And so either you get the cards with or without the tab. Now, from an aesthetic perspective, I like them better without the tab. Because, now they're standard size. So they fit in a regular card holder. They look like a card. They don't look like some weird looking food stuff issue from that time period. But I get it. A lot of people don't like the cards to be altered or have the tab removed. So you can collect the set in both ways. And I know a lot of people who collect the set with and without the tab because they want to have both versions. To me, I like without the tab, but my Mazurowski, which I believe is an SGC 84 and 88, has the tab, but it's in that ginormous SGC holder, so which looks just awful. It's like an 8x10 holder. It's just really weird. Now, this is an 8, so this is a very high grade. This is tough because not only do you have to remove that tab without doing a lot of damage, the cards were kind of distributed on food products. So, like, I could see them getting damaged before they actually got to you. And again, someone wrote Pop 2 when they bought it. There's the back. So we haven't seen 58 Hires backs, but I love the fact they included a picture of the product. Because, I'm not sure if Hires is still making root beer today, but, it's cool to see what it looked like when you actually were buying the product. I think this is a great, great set. I think the Maze and the Aaron card in this set are high on my list to get in a 7 or higher, because I just think they are some of the best looking food stuff cards ever made, and stuff like this just makes it look cooler. Again, a lot of stuff on the back about Bob Friend. He actually went to Purdue. That's another thing I didn't really know. My wife graduated from Purdue. So again, reading the card backs, I obviously know a lot about the Pirates and the 60 team, but I didn't even know that Bob Friend went to Purdue, which is where my wife went to college. That's even cool. So just doing this little video, kind of, I learned stuff too. So that's really awesome. You can see right there. The ex-Purdue athlete allowed only 2.84 runs per game in the league in 55. So, again, not 57, which would have been the year that this card should cover. But again, just showing that Bob Friend had a good year in 55. Again, great card, Ps8. Just one of my favorite cards of all time from a set. And you'll see a lot of these cards. So here we go. There's Frank Thomas, not the Frank Thomas that we know of, but this guy was still pretty good. Again, same deal. You get the perforation back. You get the cola. In 57, you get 290 with 23 home runs and 89 RBI. So, again, Frank Thomas was definitely a good contributor. He was not on the 60 team, so they traded or released Frank Thomas, or I think they traded him around that time period. So he definitely didn't make it to that 60 team, but he was definitely a big contributor to the team before he was let go. Here is Ron Klein. I believe Ron Klein was on that team as well, but on the 60 team. But this is a 5. So again, I'm putting the team. I was trying to put the whole team together. Perforation. I'm not sure. I think maybe the back hat you can maybe see. Yeah. So this is yeah. Okay. So this is, I can show you 2 cards. So this is what can kind of happen. All right. So look at the Frank Thomas. You can see there's even some white where that perforation line was a little different when the tab was, but look at the straight edge here. This card, you can see it has a curved edge here. So either the card was cut wrong, or whenever it was removed from the tab, some of the card came with it. But that little bit of missing edge there, you can see that angle, made this card not graded high at all. And it's way off center, so I mean, you could say it's a 7.0C, even if that didn't hurt it. Card's pretty off center. Ronnie Klein, he lost 7 games in a row. So Ron Klein wasn't a great player. Again, the Pirates really hadn't turned it on yet, but they were starting to get the pieces at this time. Here's Bill Verdon, and this is one of those pieces they got. So Bill Verdon, I believe, came up with the Cardinals. See what it says on the back here. He was Rookie of the Year as a member of the Cardinals. So this guy was a good outfielder. He was Rookie of the Year and came to Pittsburgh. Hit .319 in his first year. And then he backed off and hit .251 and 57. But again, they got a Rookie of the Year guy who hit .300 before. So Bill Verdon came over and was a good player. So again, the Pirates, were adding more pieces to the puzzle. Bill Verdon was, one of the kind of keys, again, to stabilize their team. What I remember about Bill Verdon is, from reading about the team, was he was like a great outfielder. So they had Clemente and right, which is not great outfielder. I believe Bill Verdon played left. But there's that. I believe there's a World Series card where Verdon makes a game-saving catch in the 60 World Series. So again, even though Verdon was a good hitter, pretty good hitter, he was known for defensive. He was a good defensive player. And he saved one of the games in the World Series by a defensive play, and it's commemorated on one of the World Series cards. So, moving on to Roy Face. So again, remember Face, you see the same players over and over because again, as you go year by year, in the 50s and 60s, remember free agency didn't exist, so it's the same players over and over. So here's Roy Face. Again, it's a 6, so not a high grade. But these cards are pretty tough, and I do like seeing all of them together. So next up is my last one. It's Gene Baker. Again, this is definitely one of the ones that looks really weird because PSA does that weird thing where they pick cards in different kind of holders. So this is a different holder. You can see how PSA put it in a little sleeve and put it in a bigger card holder. I don't know if it's because the card is cut weird. It's definitely what we call a shorty. So this is something that's really hard to understand. And so I've got them at the bottom at the same, they're at the same cut line, but you can see, look at that gap between the Gene Baker and the Roy Face. And so this is a problem. I mean, you see how short this card is compared to the Face. So think if this was like a Willie Mays card. I think today they would not look at that card as being maybe a gradable card. They'd probably give it min size. But, back when that card was graded, you can see it's an old grade. It's the old flip, one line. They probably didn't care enough to min size that card as they would probably today. Moving on to 58. So this is 58 tops. Sorry, we were in 58, but that was higher Jupiter. Here's 58 tops. So Vern Law. So Vern Law won 10 games with a 2.96 ERA, 86 ERA. So Vern Law started turning around. So again, more evidence that the Pirates were starting to turn the corner. This is an 8. And I believe I have 2 of these cards. Yeah, I do. I have 2 8s. So I don't try to get doubles, but sometimes it just happens. But 58 tops are one of those cards. When you get them really good color with white borders, they're beautiful cards. So I don't mind having 2 8s of a player like Vern Law. Next up is Bob Smith. Definitely not on the team in 60. So it's a 7. A little off center top to bottom, a little blue. Background. He won 2 games, lost 4. The 3.5 ERA. So kind of a part-time reliever for the Pirates. Next up is Whammy Douglas, which is a great name. PSA 8. But Whammy looks really ugly. It definitely ears are sticking out there. So Whammy definitely was a little weird looking. He was 3-3 with a 3.26 area again. Just a reliever or part-time starter. 11 games, 40 innings. So Could have been a starter, could have been a long reliever, who knows, but not a big contributor, was not on the 60 team. This guy was Gene Baker. Gene Baker was on the 60 team. So when I go through my 61 Pirate team set, you'll see a Gene Baker card there. Gene Baker played third base. 400 at bats, 3 home runs, 46 RBIs at 264. So kind of a light, not a big power guy. Made contact, had a fairly decent batting average, but again, Gene Baker wasn't a superstar. He was just a serviceable player for the Pirates. But this is definitely one of those cards too that, I don't know why he doesn't have any logos on his jersey. I don't know. It's a little weird. Next up is Johnny O'Brien. So again, one of the O'Brien twins. He's second base and shortstop. Again, second base was Mazurowski. Shortstop was Grote. So he was obviously a backup player. Only had 30 at bats. He hit 314, but in 30 at bats, it's really hard to, make any heads or tail of that. He was just a bench player at this point, and he didn't make the 60 Pirate team set. So this is one of the last years he was actually on the team. Denny Kravitz is also not on the 60 team. So, but it is an 8. So again, as I'm getting later and later here, most of these cards are going to be 8s, just because, they were still pretty cheap to get at the time. Hit 249, 3 home runs. So, not a starter. He was a catcher. In 60, the Pirates had 2 good catchers. They had Hal Smith and Smokey Burgess. So Kravitz definitely would have not made that team because those 2 guys are much better than he was. Hal Smith was a great catcher, and Smokey Burgess was a great bench hitter and pretty good catcher as well. So there was no need to carry a guy like Denny Kravitz back on 60 team. Roman Mijas, I don't know how to say the last name, so I'm probably butchering that. Again, he was an outfielder, so he would have been a backup. Again, he only had 140 at bats. This card is interesting to me because you can see it's got a pretty good stain right there. So staining on cards back in the day in this time period for PSA, I don't think this card would survive today without an ST grade, honestly. It's a common from the 50s, so I'm not bummed about it, but going through these cards again, you can see having, a big waxy on the back still kind of is ugly, Ron Blackburn, 7, so he was a pitcher. He won 9 and lost 13, 4.39 ERA. He was not on the 60 team, so just kind of like one of those, bottom of the rotation guys, and was replaced because, again, the Pirates and the 60 team had 4 really good starters. So here's a 59. So I got 2 cards, a Bill Verdon. So here's Verdon, 7.5 and an 8. I like that pink background. Verdon this year. So there's the 2 backs, and you can see that in 1958, Bill Verdon hit 267 with 9 home runs and 46 RBI. So he definitely was a little bit of a light hitter. He was great as a rookie for the Cardinals, but he never really duplicated that success again in the majors. You can see when he hit 17 home runs, 60 RBI. So when he won the awards, the Rookie of the Year, but he was a good defender, and that's why the Pirates had him. He was, for the standards of the 60s, he was a okay hitter with a great defender. And at this point, they had more hitters on the team at this point once they got Clemente. So here's Don Gross. It's a PSA 8. He was a pitcher for the Pirates, and he was 5-7 with a 3.9 ERA. A lot of years in the minors, Tulsa, my hometown area. I played for Cincinnati as well. So just a journeyman player, didn't make it to the Pirates. It's interesting that he's got a hitting pose. I think it's always funny when you see a pitcher with the hitting pose. So I don't know why Topps did that, but they did. Hank Foyle. So this was another backup catcher the Pirates had. He did not make the team in 60. So, but he was not too bad. Hit 285. So it's 205. We hit 270 the year before. So he was just, again, not the starter, just a backup catcher. Here is the Buck Hill Aces. So this is where we're starting to see. So Klein's on, saying but got friend off ace. And again, Haddix was a Cardinal. He came over from the Cardinals to the Pirates. And then you had Wilmer Mizell. Now, Wilmer Mizell, you haven't seen any Wilmer Mizell cards, right? Because he didn't sign a contract with Topps. So the only Wilmer Mizell cards you could get were in other sets like Cons Wieners. But he did not sign a contract with Topps, so Topps didn't have any cards of Wilmer Mizell as a bucko around this time period. Now, he was in other sets, like he was in some top sets, but there was a big time period where he was not in any sets because he did not sign a contract, and therefore they didn't make a card of him. I don't know why. He just didn't want to be on a card or what. I mean, I think that if you hear back in those days, they just came and gave you this boilerplate contract and you got some money and that was it. There wasn't really a lot of negotiation. If you didn't sign it, you didn't get a card. So I don't think Topps cared too much. So Mizell was a good pitcher. But he wasn't on cards like this at the time. A lot of good, stats about the guys here. It says here like Friend and Law and Klein accounted for 49 of the team's 84 victories. Again, they won 84 games. So the Pirates were getting above 500 at this point. So again, this is where they were starting to get better and better. Cool card, of the Pirates as they were starting their way up. Here's a guy we talked about, Smokey Burgess. He was not the starter every day, but he was a good pinch hitter. So you can see that, he played in 100 games, 200 at-bats. He hit 285. So he had a lot of years where he hit above 200, almost 300. A lot of years. And some power. I mean, he hit 21 home runs one year. But he was a pinch hitter du jour. And came off the bench quite often and was pretty valuable. And I think he set a record one year for most pinch hits. So pretty cool card. I like Smokey Burgess as a player. I love his cards. I have a lot of Smokey Burgess cards, even as a non-Pirate. I just like the name, and I think his history, and if you read about him as a player, just a very unique set of skills that let him be in the majors for a long, long time. I believe his last card's in the 60s, like late 60s, like 66, 67. So this guy was in the majors for like 14, 15 years. Last up is 59 Bob Friend. 460. So this is a little bit of a high number. PSA 8. And again, Bob Friend was starting to get really good at this point. And this is year he won 22 games with a 3.65 ERA. So 22 games, 274 innings. So, he had won, 14 the year before. So this guy was starting to turn it around. Obviously, this is 58. So in 59, he had another good year. So this is kind of where you see the Buccos really turning it around, leading into that 60 year. And so next video I'll be going over will be the 60s, starting in the 60, obviously the 60 Pirate team set. So you'll see me getting more and more cards in the 60s of these players, especially around the 60 and 61. Now, I'm probably going to do the 61 team set as a special video and do all the other years separately, because I have the complete 61 team set except for one card, which kind of silly I don't have it. It's an all-star card, I believe. But I'll go into much more detail on those cards because, again, that was the main point of the collection when I first started. But I have a ton of the 60 cards. And so, I have a lot of these players. So you can see the gradual evolution of the Pirates, the players they're getting and how good they're getting, and the players are getting better on their own. And you can see leading up to them actually beating the Yankees in 1960. So that'll be the next video. We'll talk about the 60 Pirates, which much better team, a lot more good things happening to them in the 60s. They won a World Series, and that'll be the focus of the next video. So hopefully you like my 50s collection. And again, the Hall of Famers, except for Keiner, for whatever reason, was in a different video. So if you're looking for the Hall of Famers, look to that video. This is just kind of the rest of the team and going through the different years. So hope you like it, and I'll see you next time on Cards and Comics. Bye.